Hi everyone, my name is Richard Young, the creator of this cartoon. I'm not trying to adhere to any particular political ideology, though I must admit I am probably a little bit right of center in my thinking. With artificial intelligence providing the artistic talent, something I lack, I've been able to put my thoughts and ideas into these political cartoons. Today's cartoon takes place in a college classroom. A professor lectures from a podium. Behind him hang three framed quotations about freedom of thought and speech from Voltaire, Euripides, and Plato. These are foundational statements of the Western intellectual tradition, the tradition that universities exist to carry forward. And in the foreground, a student leans over and whispers to a classmate, "I've heard that giving our honest opinion can affect our grade." The point of this cartoon is the gap between what those quotations on the wall represent and what the students in the room have actually learned. The university is supposed to be the place where young students learn to think fearlessly, to follow arguments wherever they lead, to disagree openly and civilly. The cartoon depicts a room where students have instead learned the opposite lesson, that some opinions are safer left unspoken. I want to be careful here because this is a subject where it's easy to exaggerate, and I don't want to do that. Let me start with what the data actually shows. The Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, FIRE, conducts the largest annual survey of campus speech climate in the country. Their most recent survey included more than 68,000 students at over 250 colleges and universities. The findings are sobering. Across all the schools surveyed, roughly a quarter of students report self censoring in the classroom. At some institutions, that figure approaches half. A majority of students report that certain topics are difficult to discuss openly and honestly on campus. This isn't a fringe concern or a partisan talking point. FIRE is a viewpoint neutral organization. They've defended pro Palestinian student protesters and conservative speakers alike. The decline in campus free expression they document affects students across the political spectrum, though their data shows it has grown particularly acute among conservative students. Now, I want to be fair about the complexity here because there's a legitimate counterargument worth taking seriously. Some people say, isn't it appropriate for a professor to grade students on the quality of their reasoning? If a student makes a poorly argued case, shouldn't that affect the grade regardless of the conclusion? My answer to that is yes, absolutely. Grading the rigor of an argument is the entire point of education. A student who argues badly should get a lower grade than a student who argues well, even if I happen to agree with the first student's conclusions. But that's not what the cartoon is depicting, and it's not what the survey data is measuring. The concern isn't that students fear being graded on the quality of their reasoning. The concern is that students fear being graded on their conclusions, that reaching the wrong answer, however well defended, carries a penalty. The whisper in the cartoon isn't, "I'm worried my arguments aren't good enough." It's, "Giving our honest opinion can affect our grade." Honesty itself has become the risk. And here's why that matters so much in this particular setting. A classroom is precisely where students should be wrestling with the hardest questions. Questions about justice, liberty, equality, authority, the proper role of government. These are questions on which reasonable, thoughtful people have disagreed for thousands of years. If students can't explore the full range of serious answers to these questions without fear, then the classroom is teaching conformity. And it's doing so under portraits of the very thinkers who gave their reputations and sometimes their lives for the freedom to think otherwise. There's an irony the cartoon captures that I want to dwell on for a moment. Socrates, Plato's teacher, the source of that line about the unexamined life, was executed by the city of Athens for essentially asking too many uncomfortable questions and corrupting the youth with them. The entire Western tradition of free inquiry begins with a man who is killed for thinking out loud. To hang Plato's words on the wall of a classroom where students are afraid to speak honestly is to honor the memory of free thought while abandoning its practice. I don't think most professors are villains in this story. I suspect the great majority are decent people who genuinely want their students to think well. The chilling effect the cartoon depicts usually doesn't come from explicit threats. It comes from something subtler, a sense students pick up about which views are welcome and which are not, an accumulation of small signals, a culture that forms gradually and then becomes self reinforcing. Students teach each other to be careful. The fear spreads by whisper, which is exactly what the cartoon shows. The solution isn't to demand that universities teach any particular set of conclusions. That would simply replace one orthodoxy with another. The solution is to recommit to the actual purpose of a university, which is not to transmit correct opinions, but to cultivate the capacity for independent thought. A genuinely educated person should be able to argue the strongest case for positions they personally reject. They should be able to sit in disagreement without feeling threatened by it. They should leave the university better at thinking, not just better at signaling the right answers. That's what the thinkers on the wall understood. Voltaire didn't say, I will defend your right to say things I agree with. He said he'd defend to the death your right to say things he disapproved of. That's the whole point. Free inquiry that only protects approved conclusions isn't free inquiry at all. What do you think? Have campus speech climates actually declined, or is this concern overstated? And if it is a real problem, what would actually fix it? Let me know in the comments. If you found this interesting, I'd appreciate you subscribing to this channel, liking the video, and even sharing it with friends. Thanks for listening.